if you would, gently close your eyes or soften your gaze and allow yourself just to be present in this moment. Present and at peace. We're here today in this beautiful space, not only celebrating the mothers, the nurturing spirit, the essence of all of us, but also just celebrating that we have the ability to come together. And so I invite you to take a slow, deep breath and then exhale gently, releasing any of the busyness of the morning, any of the tensions of daily life. And I invite you one more time. Let's inhale clarity and exhale what you no longer need to carry with you. And then if you would, bring your awareness to the center of your chest. Imagine a warm, gentle light glowing right there in the center of your being. This is the light of divine presence, that presence within you. And you may sense that as a tender, nurturing presence, that presence of the divine feminine, for it's available to all of us. That presence is steady, loving, wise, and with each breath, that light grows brighter, steadier, calmer. And silently within, ask, what is mine to be? What is mine to give? What is the divine invitation on my life in this season? There's no need to force an answer. Just simply listen. And just notice any word or image or feeling or memory, or even that inner knowing that begins to rise up. And trust what comes softly. Trust what feels grounded in love. And let yourself receive as well as seek. Let yourself be held by that same presence that calls you forward. If doubt appears, breathe into it and let it soften. You don't need to be in that perfect certainty about anything in life. You only need openness. And let this truth settle in your spirit. This truth which says, I am guided, I am supported, I'm not behind. My purpose is unfolding, and it is unfolding in divine timing. And if you would, I invite you to repeat to yourself, I am clear in my divine purpose, and I live each day with intention and joy, knowing that I am fulfilling my calling and experiencing my true essence. And let those words sink. Let them sink below the mind and into the heart. Imagine yourself living from this truth, showing up with courage, peace, generosity, and joy. See yourself blessing others simply by being fully present to who you are and to who you are called to be. And if you want to rest in that for a few moments, moving into the silence, continuing to hold that light and to have an awareness of what is coming to you in the silence, in the silence. And I invite you to take one more deep breath. And as you do, offer gratitude for the light within you and for the path that's unfolding before you. And when you're ready, gently return your awareness to this room, to this time and space, and be present. Be present for yourself and for those around you. And so it is. Amen. Okay, so good morning. So I will tell you that threw me a little because I'm so accustomed to doing the meditation after the talk. So, and I forgot where I was. So I have to say, I'm impressed with these hats. You know, I wish I would have known in advance because I would have come fully prepared. I love hats of all kinds, and so it's always fun for me. And so it's good to see you each here this morning. We had a wonderful time this weekend. You know, I think I had a fun time yesterday. And so those of you that were here, yeah. So, you know, and I want to wish my happy Mother's Day, but my happy Mother's Day goes out to each and every person who has ever entertained or engaged in a nurturing state of being. And so that means it's probably not just women, huh? That's right. So I extend my gratitude and I extend my love to all who have entered into that place of nurturing, that place of support. Because the world would sure be a lot different if we didn't have that, wouldn't it? And that's not a world I don't believe it's a world I would have much interest in being in. I'm looking around this at you guys, so let me see here. Hi. How's everybody on this side of the room? Oh, mercy. So, you know, today, as Stephen shared, our main focus is about living with purpose and discovering and living your divine calling. And so on this day, we do so through a sacred lens. The nurturing, the intuitive, the courageous, the life-giving presence that we often call the divine feminine. You know, Mother's Day invites us to honor mothers, grandmothers, spiritual mothers, mentors, caregivers, and all those who have embodied love in a nurturing form. You know, it's also a day to honor that divine quality in mothering itself, the holy capacity to nourish life, to protect what is precious, and to believe in what is not yet visible, and call forth that highest in one another. You know, in doing this and preparing, when talking about that protection thing, I lived in the mountains of northeastern Georgia, and we had bears. And there's one thing you never want to do. You never want to cross a bear with her cub, because she will fight to the death to protect that cub. And we know that that's true of so many mothers. And so that is the cherishing piece that we hold on to. You know, and like I've already said, you know, in Unity we understand that the divine is not limited by human categories. And so that divine feminine doesn't care what gender you are. That divine feminine is present in all of us, and it grows as we choose to nurture it or not. So, Myrtle Fillmore, the mother of Unity, I thought it would be appropriate today to bring her into this a little bit. So, she's a beautiful guide for us, for today and for any day. As the co-founder, Myrtle did not merely build an organization, she lived in a calling. She lived in her way of bringing forth and nurturing this movement that we call Unity. She listened inwardly, she prayed faithfully, and gave herself to a life of spiritual encouragement, healing, and transformation. That's something that we're all capable of, but it's whether it's our particular calling or not. And that's the important thing, is to listen. I do want to talk about one little piece with this, and it's where people get confused. You know, I know, and I have another community I work with, and it's about 4 little women. The oldest is 102, the youngest is about 75. And so when you start talking about what is your purpose, what is your calling to those age groups, it's like, well, it's a little late, isn't it? It's never too late. What I've realized as I've been preparing for this monthly focus and things like that is we have multiple callings in life. And each calling, to me, is a preparation for our next calling. As I look back through my life, I recognize that everything I've ever done has brought me where I am today. And without all that, this calling that I'm living now would have probably never come into an existence. I look back and, I never thought, or I never consciously thought, that I would be doing this minister thing. It wasn't really on the radar. But in looking back, in retrospect, I grew up in a tradition. I grew up in a Southern Baptist church. If the doors were open, we were there. That's how it was. And I remember one Sunday we were having communion. And after church, I went around, and they had the little things in the back of the pews where you could put the communion cups. Well, I went around and collected all the communion cups. And I took them home and I washed them. And I proceeded to get all my stuffed animals and dolls. And I took them out in front, and we had like 5 steps that went down to the sidewalk. And I put them all on the steps. And guess what we did? We had communion. Of course, I preached first. And I can't remember if any of them were saved or not. But I preached first, and then we had communion. And so that was a memory that was long past, long forgotten. But now, as I look at it in retrospect, I wonder if that was the first sign that this could be what the unfolding was going to be all about. It could be. I was probably 6 or 7 years old, so not very old. Probably didn't know any better at that point. But what that leads me to understand is that we are in constant preparation. And we get confused by thinking that our purpose and our calling has to be some big, extravagant thing. Or, I've hit this age, I'm retired, I'm done, there's no more callings. Wrong. That's not what it's about. In my perspective, as long as I am breathing, I have a call for something. And I have a choice, don't I, as to whether I answer that call or not. A divine calling is that sacred purpose that emerges when our gifts and our deep values and our compassion and divine guidance all come together. And it's so much easier to look at retrospect than it is to go, okay, so I'd much rather do it the way where it's a natural flow of the divine rather than trying to force it. Because I have also discovered that when I try to force things, it never quite works out the same. Have you had that experience? If you push something, sometimes it pushes back. But I remember the different things in my life. I remember my first role in leadership. I was in a sorority in college, and I was one of the leaders in that sorority. My first role in leadership. Scared to death. But I said yes. And see, that's the piece, is we have to feel into it, and then we have a choice. And when we say yes, though, and I don't know if you guys have experienced this or not, but when we say yes, you better hang on. Because as soon as you say yes, it's like off to the races we go, and everything comes at you all at once. And it's a fun ride. As long as we stay centered, as long as we stay focused, as long as we keep that ego thing out of it and do it for the right reasons. So, calling is less about status and more about alignment. It's the place where your inner life and your outer life begin to agree. So I know that for years and years, I did all these things in my outer life. I was a social worker in healthcare and with hospice and the terminally ill. I wound up in various aspects of medical, the healthcare system, but it was always in some sort of a supportive role. I wound up doing some marketing. We've got to do that. If you don't believe me, turn on your TV or your radio and you see what the marketing does. Had to do that, and then it was operations and organizational structure and all of those pieces, managing systems and programs and individuals. It was a good career, but there was something missing. That little girl who was playing with her teddy bears and her dolls was in there going, wait a minute, there's something else for you to do. Wait a minute, we've been doing all these things. You've gotten all these experiences. And these are things that will help you to be who you're called to be. And I'm like, not me. Really? I'm supposed to do this? You've got to be kidding. Huh. Isn't that interesting? And so, after prayer, meditation, and honestly, a little gnashing of the teeth, I said yes. And you want to talk about snowballs. It just went on, and everything just started opening up and erupting. And before I knew it, before we know it, here I stand. It's been years later. I have been so blessed by the different pieces, and even in ministry, there's different callings. So what I want to do, though, is encourage you, no matter where you are in your journey, no matter whether you think that you're done or not, you're not. There's something. There's something within you that is calling you to the next level. We sometimes don't feel prepared. We sometimes don't feel worthy. And we know in Unity, what do we teach? We are worthy, we are good, and nothing is outside of the scope of our abilities when we are aligned in spirit. Charles Fillmore describes zeal, one of our 12 attributes, as the inward fire of the soul that urges humankind onward. And I hear purpose in that description. So I think what happens when you say yes is that zeal just kind of pops and everything just kind of flows rapidly onward. Divine calling, there's a warmth in that phrase. It has an aliveness in it. It has a spiritual momentum. And sometimes when we are in this place of listening, we still question it. Are you sure? Are you sure that's mine to do? Are you sure it's not Stephen's or Deb's? Are you sure it's not theirs? Maybe I just got caught up in their frequency and, Yeah, the what? But the more we're in alignment, the more we're connected with our truth, the more clear it becomes, it's ours. It's ours. And then we go about the process of sorting it out. But you know what? So much of the time we spend too much time up here trying to think it through when we should do that 18-inch drop we talked about yesterday and feel it through. Feel it through. If you've been with me either yesterday or in workshops through the time that I've been serving with you, you'll know that when I say, how does it feel? That's my cue to you to get out of your head. To get out of your head and connect with that divinity that you are. You know, we always think, too, that a calling is something we have to do. See, for me, a calling is something that we have to be. You know, there's a whole difference in being centered. There's a whole difference in being a minister and ministering. There's a difference in saying, yeah, I'm feeling called to, let's see, what's something that somebody might be called to do around here? I'm feeling called to investigate a youth program. Well, that's great, but what are you going to do about it? All right? One of the things I think is important as we go through our days is to be still long enough to hear. I remember a time in my life where I was just running ragged all the time. I was working 60 hours a week and, you know, had home and a partner and all that, and that didn't leave a whole lot of room to be still. And what I discovered is I liked it that way. We sometimes use busyness to escape, to not have to hear, to not have to recognize that there's more for us. Does anybody do that? Yeah? You know, it's common, you know. We're busy being busy rather than being in the stillness and opening our hearts. You know, we can open these ears, but we need to open these ears as well and hear from that place of our divine being. You know, let me talk a little more about Myrtle. You know, Myrtle's life gives us a practical picture of purpose. And she's often remembered for her healing prayer work and for the affirmation, I am a child of God, and therefore I do not inherit sickness. But beyond the words themselves, Myrtle's life reveals something essential. Purpose becomes clear when we begin to agree with truth rather than fear. Let me say that again. Purpose becomes clear when we begin to agree with truth rather than fear. Now, we talked about truth and fear. Yeah, we talked about love and fear, and truth and love to me are in that same vibratory field. We talked about that yesterday. And so our choices are, which way? You could almost take it into the biblical thing about serving two masters. You can't be serving love and truth and hanging out with fear. They don't coincide. They don't support each other. And they sure don't support you when we're in that inner conflict. You know, Myrtle didn't wait to feel powerful by the world's standards. She began with spiritual receptivity. She was open. She listened. She prayed. She took divine ideas seriously. And she cultivated that inner life. And from that inner life came her outer ministry, came her healing influence, and that lasting blessing that we call unity today. And I can hear it now. Some of you are going, well, that's great, but I'm not doing ministry. Guess what? You are. I look at it this way. When you greet someone with a warm smile, you're doing ministry. When you have a kind word for someone, you're doing ministry. When your light is shining, and you may not be saying a word, but when you're standing there and being the presence, you're doing ministry. Can you see that? And so, what I'm doing right now is I'm standing in front of a room full of ministers. Okay. We're back? Okay. It had gone green, red, and then back to green. So we'll watch it, and if not, I'll grab this one. Okay. So let's see, where was I? Oh yeah. You guys are a bunch of ministers. Wasn't going to let you off that easy. I think maybe Mike pushed the button back there just so that part wouldn't continue, because he's like, See, doesn't it feel good to laugh? See, when we laugh, to me, that is one of the most joyous ministerial things that we can do. We're infusing the quantum field with joy. And so maybe your purpose today is to just carry that light heart. Allow yourself to shine. Allow yourself to be present. Allow yourself to be a contagion of love, joy, peace, and harmony. How would that feel if that were your calling today? Is that something you could do? I heard some yeses, so thank you. I look forward to seeing the fruits of your divinity shining around the world. All right. So, let me make sure I didn't miss anything. It's interesting, I do notes, and I use them a little bit. I try to make sure I get my quotes in there. But I'm more concerned about feeling the hearts of those in the room and speaking heart to heart with those hearts in the room. So let me just close with sharing a little bit more. That on Mother's Day, Myrtle offers us another gift as well, as the gift of unity. She embodies spiritual mothering. She demonstrates that to mother is not only to raise children, though that is holy work, but to mother is also to bless life, protect possibility, nourish faith, and hold a vision of wholeness until it becomes visible. See, that's the whole thing. We hold the vision, and we hold it until it makes manifest. That's how powerful we all are. We are creative beings. You know, many people are called to this kind of spiritual motherhood, not only in churches, but in friendships and families and communities, and then just in quiet acts of unseen devotion. So I would venture to say that we have the true mothers of the day. When I say true mothers, we have those who have had or raised children, but we are all have the capacity of that mothering nature. And so I invite us to remember that and to live into that. So purpose will unfold in prayer. It will unfold in reflection, in journaling, in community. And sometimes we need to make sure that we're being silent to hear if we are in that right vein, in that right alignment. And so, before we close, I would like to have another moment of silence. If you would, honor me with that. And as you're comfortable, close your eyes. And allow yourself to move into that heart space and ask the question, what is mine to do in this moment? What is mine to do tomorrow? What is mine to do next week? And remembering that our callings don't need to look like others. Our callings only need to be what is ours, to be true, and to be offered and received in love. And I thank you for this time. I bless you. I hold you in my hearts whether I'm here or whether I'm in Canada. So I'm always with you. And it's always my honor and my joy. Namaste.